G'day. So, electricity generation. I was going to dedicate an entire series to it, but it's completely pointless because in a survival situation, you've got to have a balanced approach. Your entire survival is not based on electricity. So I may make an advanced series for people who are good with electricity, like myself. Not qualified, but good with it. Who can be electricity savvy when needed in a survival situation, given circumstances are stable after a couple of weeks. But in general, you only need to know the basics. So it's just going to be this one video. Now, push come to shove. There are just three components to electricity generation. The form of electricity generator, 1, the inverter, 2, and the battery source, 3. As long as you've got those 3, you can generate electricity. Now, batteries are piss easy to source. You've only got to get a car battery. Every car battery, save none, is rechargeable as far as I'm concerned. And you can recharge those batteries, as well as dedicated batteries that are rechargeable, camping batteries that look like car batteries. You can recharge them with any generator source, particularly solar power, any form of wind power you put together, or any other generator you can find which generates electricity and can be hooked to the battery. You don't need to be, as I said, a professor about the way you generate electricity. You just need a basic way to generate electricity. The fundamental of generating electricity is very simple. You just need a magnet that moves around a conductor. As long as a magnet can move around a conductor, then electricity will flow through the conductor. Now, how good you make that, how efficient it is another story. But the general principle is, as I said, from generator to battery to inverter. If you don't have that, you can't generate electricity. So think of it this way. The hardest thing to source is the inverter. Once you've sourced the battery, all you've got to do is fathom a way to conduct, or not to conduct, but to generate electricity. Okay, as I said, generating electricity is as simple as those 3 steps. Conduct, or not conduct electricity, generate electricity. It recharges the battery, and that battery feeds the inverter. It plugs into the inverter, and whatever you want to plug into the inverter works. Now, in most cases, you're not going to have a commercial electricity supply, but it will be enough to power important things. And where electricity is important for survival, it generally concerns heating equipment, cooking equipment, and lighting equipment, because having an electricity supply, a reliable one, will ensure that you've always got those things at hand, which is very good for survival. Note that this particular video is not geared towards urban survival, because in urban survival, you've got a you've got the common electricity supply, the grid. And because you've got the grid and it's functioning, you don't need to do any of this stuff. You have abandoned places, etc. Now, if push comes to shove, you can rig electricity supply because a place doesn't have electricity, but it's hardly vital. You can, don't get me wrong, you can still implement it in your homeless survival situation, but it's definitely not paramount as compared to scenarios where the entire society collapses, there's a war zone, a pandemic, a nuclear aftermath, etc. Okay, the very serious urban survival situations warrants having an electricity supply if you've procured all the necessities, the survival necessities. As I said, here we go. 1, shelter / fire, because you need warmth. Your body needs to keep warm. 2, signaling. 3, water. And 4, food. Now, once you know that they've been sustained for a week or two, and you know you can prolong that beyond that, that's when you can start looking into electricity supplies, even in an outright survival situation. But as I said, generally speaking, in a homelessness situation, you don't need to rush to an electricity supply, because if push comes to shove, you can charge something at Macca's, you can charge something in a toilet, you can get water from a local toilet. You've seen everything I've showed you in this series thus far. It's just not a necessity. But if you really want to, for convenience sake, and everything else in your homelessness situation is, met, those 4 survival essentials, then you can go and do so, as said, for convenience sake. But don't, in a homeless situation, you wouldn't really go out of convenience sake. So now let's go back to the actual electricity generation. Okay, so this is all you do. First, source the battery, because there is absolutely no fucking point in even trying to generate electricity if you don't have that most important part of the 3 components. Those components, again, being the generator, the battery, and the inverter. You'll need wires and all that, but Jesus Christ, you can rig wires from a fucking inside a wall, old power cords, wires. Yes, definitely a component, but it's the least of your concern. They're easy to rig. So you've just got to put your improvisation hat on in this one, and 95 out of 100 times in a post-apocalypse world, that it's worst case, even then you'll be able to make electricity. So don't think that if society breaks down, you're fucked. See, this video is even geared for you people who are completely hopeless. I'm going to make it very, very simple for you. So you find battery, car battery particularly. If you know there's cars around, it's hardly likely that battery is going to be faulty. Get the battery, store it. And just to be certain, get about 3 or 4. You don't need more than that, and you don't want to be a fucking hog. There are probably other people out there who want to generate electricity. Let them get batteries. Even 2's enough, just to be certain. You can always go out there again and get more batteries, but 3 or 4 will certainly keep you going for at least a year, if not longer. So get your batteries, minimum 2. 2 will even do. Once you've got your batteries, you need to generate electricity. You can use the battery just like that, but once it runs out of juice, if it's fed into an inverter, well, that's it, no more electricity. So you've got to continuously recharge that battery for electricity to keep going. And it's good to have 2 batteries because you can keep rotating them. So as soon as one wastes, bang, the other one's ready to go. That's the whole idea. Plain batteries are really good. You can get them from good camping stores. From battery shops. But you can also go to camping stores today and get a few and keep them on hand. The hardest thing to procure is probably going to be the inverter. So once you've got your battery, don't go straight to the electricity generation, because that's going to be completely pointless if you're trying to feed into household items with a 12-volt battery. Now, as I said, I could make the advanced series, and I may very well do that, but it'll be outside the scope of this course. The whole point of that is you can put something together to make it feed into the household voltage, which is, I think, 250 something. I could be completely wrong, but the point is 12 volts, your car battery or whatever it is not going to link with a household voltage. So we're going to not occupy our minds with that sexy mechanical electrical engineering stuff. It's pointless for the purpose of this video, because you don't need to do it for brute electricity generation in a survival situation. It just becomes very handy in an advanced scope if you've got time on your hands and you're savvy, which, as I said, I may very well make an advanced series, and it may not even be on YouTube. I may do it on one of those course platforms, but I'll think about that later. The point is, we go back to the battery. You've got your batteries. Now you need to find an inverter, because you're not going to bother with, as said, doing all this engineering stuff. So an inverter is going to be your hardest thing to find, but you can find it. Every 10th house or so will probably have one. If it's a really bad world-ending situation, go to your nearest camping store. You might find an inverter in there. They look like car amplifiers. So anything that looks like a car amplifier but isn't a car amplifier could very well be an inverter. Some inverters don't even say inverter on it, but you'll see a characteristic power outlet. You'll see things upon the lines of AC/DC. You'll see a lot of things, and it's probably an inverter. So this is going to be a part of this video. Do some research. Google inverter, power inverter, whatever, and get a comprehension of it. It's very, very simple. Very, very, very simple. Battery, the very terminals, plug into the terminals, so the input terminals of the inverter. That's it. And you're never charging the battery at the same time it's connected to the inverter. Do you get it? So you don't have to worry about connecting 3 things at once. There's only ever going to be two things connected at once. So if you're charging the battery, the inverter's not connected. The battery is simply connected as what was the output now becomes the input, and the electric generator is the output. That feeds the battery, it recharges it, you unplug that, then you feed that into the inverter, and now that input, the battery, becomes the output, because it's now giving that inverter electricity. Does that make sense? It's very simple. So again, you plug battery terminals into inverter, the input of the inverter. You can't miss it. They usually have screws, black and red screws. You just plug that into that, and immediately electricity will be available to that inverter if the battery has been charged properly. In most cases, it will have been. So let's presume you know how to charge the battery properly, which we'll get to soon. If you connect it to the inverter, immediately available becomes electricity. That becomes active. A light should come on because it's live. There's usually lights on the inverter, green and red. As soon as it switches away from red, it'll do that momentarily, just to say as if it's loading, and then bang, it'll show green. That means, and nearly every inverter has that. That will mean that the inverter is live. You can then connect something to that inverter, into that output, and electricity is there. Okay, now you know how to plug battery into inverter. This is the harder part, electricity generation. Okay, and yes, electricity is this simple. It's not that fucking hard, people. People make it hard because they imagine electricity to be something difficult. When you imagine something to be difficult, you've already set yourself a failure. That's one of the key secrets to being clever, just not looking at something as if it's difficult. It's that simple. So now, electricity generation, the third component, I said it was the first, but in this part of the video, the third component, we're not really going to include the wires as a full component, as said, because you can pretty much find them anywhere and improvise them. Any wires can be used so long as you know where they're going. It doesn't matter what color they are. The colors of wires just give you an understanding of what's what. They're just copper. So you can rig something together. I'm not even going to bother with that. It's very, very simple. All copper conducts. It's that fucking simple. But just bear in mind, you will need something that's reasonably thick. You're not going to get like a fucking toothpick wire and use that for electrons to flow. That's just pretty silly. You want something sort of substantial. So if you're going to modify, if you're going to improvise, use a your typical power cord that would come from something like a fridge or computer. Your typical power cord. That's to start off with. That should be fine. But if you've actually got the power cords that come with those things, even better. It's not that hard. Now, electricity generation. Solar panels, they're fucking everywhere. Nearly every second house has one, if not every house, in some instances. Solar panel, all you've got to do is go up onto the roof, take one or two off. On some of the solar panels, they'll have special, not restrictors, but they have, on the actual solar panels, there's like, they're not inbuilt inverters or anything like that. They're specialized components, so you're going to have to try to bypass them. You pretty much have to skin that solar panel, so all it's doing is going from sun to solar panel to wires. Once you do that, you're sweet. Some solar panels are good to go. You don't even need to do anything. You just take them off, even the house ones, the roof ones, and you ensure that you take it off from where it just goes from solar panel to wire. And that wire, those two wires, black and red, straight to battery while the sun's up. Okay? It's that simple. All you do is find solar panel, ensure that the only thing going directly to the solar panel is red and black cords as part of that solar panel. Okay? And connect to battery. That's it. That's your job. And that there's no other specialized components in between. It's that fucking simple. And if you've got that, if all the wires as part of that solar panel and each little solar part, if all of them connect to that wire in the proper sequence, they all do, but if you get it right, then that feeds straight into the battery. Electricity is generated. Now, once you've generated electricity and you've charged the battery for a day or two, it should be sweet. If you start seeing the battery bubbling or doing anything odd, hot, take it off. But generally, a full day in the sun should be sweet. Maybe a little bit more. If you have not a thermometer, if you have an altimeter, an ohmmeter or ammeter, multimeter, you can actually measure the voltage. Once the voltage returns to the battery's voltage, that means it's charged. You're probably not going to find that, but if you do, it'll be really helpful. If you don't, you're just going to have to guess and go for the day or two and just monitor it. Now, if you don't have solar panels, this is as far as I'm going to go with engineering. Okay? Conducting electricity is simpler than bowling a fucking cricket ball. Okay, it takes years to bowl a cricket ball. You could conduct electricity in a fucking few minutes. All you've got to basically do is have a conductor revolve around a magnet or a magnet revolve around a conductor. Now, how you rig that up, using little implements, wires, screws, bits and pieces, cans, whatever you can find, how you make that work is up to you. I'm not going to make this a lesson about mechanics. I could, but that's outside the scope of this course. That may be in an advanced course I make with that electricity facet. But just understand that to generate electricity, all you've got to do is have a magnet go around copper, or copper go around a magnet. And what you're trying to do is get that all together on some type of pin or some type of mechanical device that you rig, and have at one end of that voltage being created a minus, and at the other a plus. It's that fucking simple. Because what happens when they revolve around each other, in whatever order you devise, a voltage is created. A potential difference is what it's called. And at one end will be 12 volts more than the other end, or 12 volts less than the other end. It's called relative voltage. And that's all you're creating. And by doing that, or you're pretty much trying to catch the electrons. Think of it that way. You're fishing for electrons. Well, you're not really fishing because it's been created, but you are. It's like an electron catchment device. Once you get that thing spinning, however you do that, whether that's by wind power, whether that's fucking manual, you cranking it, whether it's on a power bike, whether it's you rig a little hydro thing where a natural water fountain is present, well, not natural water fountain, a waterfall or some sort of thing like that. Whatever you rig, however you make that keep spinning, all you've got to do, so to speak, is catch the electrons. And however you put that device together, you've only got to have one wire at one end and one at the other end, and connect those two ends to the battery. And electrons will flow straight from that device you've made into the battery. It has to. It's that fucking simple. So I hope you understand that's how simple electricity generation is. If that still stumps you, then just Google the simple concepts of electricity generation, a Van der Stuff generator, a static generator, all the original generators that were created back in the 1800s. It's that fucking simple. It's actually not that fucking hard. And once you've got all that in place, you've got electricity.